All right. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation on innovative approaches to engaging all employees in social impact. The key word, of course, in that title is all, since we'll be talking today about how companies can better include employees in those harder to reach roles in their civic engagement and their volunteer opportunities. And we're really excited to bring you insights from 3 CSR leaders. And the bonus is that by being here today, you will also get first access to our brand new learning brief on this very topic. So we're hoping you'll get lots of good takeaways and tactical tips that you can apply to your own work. I am Katie Stearns. I'm the Chief Global Corporate Solutions Officer here at Points of Light. And for those of you that might not be familiar with Points of Light, we are a global, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to inspire, equip, and mobilize people to take action that changes the world. To do that, we partner with companies of all sizes and across industries. We work with NGOs around the globe, including a pretty incredible affiliate network in 39 countries. And we work with individuals who are interested in doing good. My team specifically has the opportunity on a daily basis to connect with and to come alongside companies in their social impact work. We host sector events like the Points of Light Conference. We convene leading companies through our Corporate Service Council. And we can also facilitate your team's strategic planning session or create a toolkit for your champions, coordinate your week of service, lots more. There are lots of ways that we partner with companies to scale and to deepen social impact. The question that we're going to be talking about today is one that we hear a lot from CSR leaders. That was true pre-pandemic, and it has continued to be true. And the folks that ask this question want to make their employee, volunteer, and social impact programs accessible to every colleague, including those whose work function or their work environment, perhaps, or even their work shift might present some logistical roadblocks. Today's panel will be moderated by my colleague, Katie Elder, Points of Light's Vice President of Corporate Insights. And Katie's own experience as a CSR leader, combined with more than 10 years of consulting with companies on a social impact journey, really make her just the right guide for this conversation. So with that, Katie, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Katie. It's a real joy to be able to facilitate today's webinar, which will showcase 3 leading companies and their innovative approaches to engaging all employees in social impact. And when I say all employees, as Katie mentioned, we really are talking about including those who have roles that are often referred to as harder to reach. And just to humor me, for those of you out in the audience, what are the types of employee roles that you find more difficult to engage in your company's CSR activities? Would love for you to take a second and drop those roles into the chat. But when I use the term harder to reach, it may conjure up images of cashiers, manufacturing engineers, customer service reps, claims adjusters, delivery drivers, healthcare workers, those who work in a research lab, those who work overnight shifts in your company's distribution centers, even many of our fellow colleagues who serve in an hourly or part-time capacity. Now, all of these are much needed roles that make our businesses stronger, more profitable, more efficient, and are integral to every sector of our economy. In Points of Light's latest white paper, which we'll publish today, we're calling these roles frontline or non-wired because they may come with non-traditional or fixed schedules, and the employees who fill these roles may not be connected to their employer's communication systems all day, nor are they sitting in front of a computer 5 days a week like you and I might. But for us, harder to reach is really deficit-based language. Employees serving in these roles have the same desires to connect to corporate purpose and want to find ways to make meaningful impact on the communities and causes that matter to them. There just happens to be barriers based on the nature of their work or their environment that makes hearing about opportunities and participating challenging. In Edelman's Trust Barometer special report, which focuses on trust at work, published just about 2 weeks ago, they refer to these employees as deskless workers, which is a fitting descriptor for most of these diverse roles. We'll drop a link to Edelman's report in the chat because it is really fascinating and very timely for our webinar today. The report points out that these deskless workers are at the periphery of an organization, are less trusting overall, and feel disconnected from corporate life. Now, why does this matter to us as corporate citizenship practitioners? It matters because even when it seems that there's universal interest and understanding of a company's social impact goals, employees in these diverse roles may feel detached and undervalued, as some companies fail to, or maybe choose not to, extend all benefits or programs to them. These employees may not believe that they're able to take advantage of work-life policies and activities without jeopardizing their employment status or their advancement. And this doesn't just potentially undermine their contributions to the company's social impact and their own sense of civic engagement, but it can perpetuate feelings of disconnection. And that can affect an employee's experience and perception of their employer, which has implications for the business and their supervisors who must address performance and retention goals. Now, of course, that's really an internal dilemma, but there are also external reasons for creating accessibility for all. Simply, more employee contributions and volunteers translate to greater community impact, wider reach, and improved effectiveness for our nonprofit partners that are working toward improving social conditions. And your company's leadership also wants this, given the rising global consumer and investor expectations for companies to not just deliver on profits, but actively create long-term value for all stakeholders, including the communities where they operate. That's why it's critical to engage employees across your company's footprint, regardless of role or work setting. Many are drawn to volunteer experiences or the opportunity to participate in social impact, particularly if it offers a sense of meaning that's absent from their daily tasks. So, how can you ensure that all employees feel invited and have real opportunity to get involved? Well, that's what we're here to discuss today. I spent time talking to members of Points of Light's Corporate Service Council, which includes more than 100 Fortune 1000 companies, as well as social impact leaders in the field. And one thing I believe we'd all agree with is there's not one solution that works across industries and employee roles and work settings. But don't fear, I did find promising practices and have compiled as much as possible into our newest learning brief. So we'll drop a link to that white paper in the chat now so that you can continue exploring how to ensure equal access for all of the employees in your company's workforce. I couldn't fit it all into those pages though, so I'm extremely proud to have 3 fantastic CSR leaders on the webinar today to really bring this challenge and their approaches to life. And before we begin our discussion, I've got 2 poll questions for you in the audience. Kyria, if you'll launch our first poll question, awesome, thank you. We'd like to understand where you might be on your company's journey of making social impact accessible to all employees, regardless of their role. So tell us if you're just starting to think about it, if you're actively working on a plan, think you've got a solid plan, but haven't yet implemented it. Maybe you've just implemented something, practices, a policy, or an activity to test its effectiveness, or you've been pretty successful at this, but you're here today to learn new ideas. Tell us in the poll. We've got a clear winner here. I will go ahead and end the poll because it looks like most of you, almost 50% of you out there, are actively working on this, we'll call challenge, this opportunity, which is fabulous. That's why we know you're here, right? It's to learn. And then we've got one more poll question. If you'll happen to launch it, Kyria, for me. Awesome. All right. We also want to know what has been hardest about engaging employees that do serve in these diverse roles and work settings. And you are welcome to choose any of these responses that apply to you, whether it's limited budget, senior leadership or middle management support, communication issues, the scheduling and flexibility constraints that come with these diverse roles, or is it just, the corporate culture that this is nice to do this social impact work, but it's not necessary, and certainly not necessary for every employee to participate. Give you a second or two to respond there. Looks like scheduling and flexibility is certainly coming out a winner, and as well as communication barriers. Awesome. Okay. I will tell you, of course, that there are similar challenges across every industry. It's regardless of employee size or the type of roles that your company employs. So thank you for answering those questions there. So that happens to be a perfect segue to our panel discussion, where we'll get into potential solutions for the challenges that you're facing. We've invited 3 very talented CSR leaders to our webinar today, and we'll also drop their bios into the chat should you have interest in learning more about their professional history. But on the docket for today is Sylvia Stevens-Edward, Senior Director, Community Relations at Liberty Mutual, Megan Zamora, Senior Manager of Global Responsibility for Starbucks, and Gary Levante, Senior Vice President, Corporate Responsibility and Communications for Berkshire Bank. We are so proud to have all 3 of you here with us today. Welcome to our webinar. And just one last piece of logistics. I'm hoping to have many of our attendees' questions answered during our discussion, but should something not be addressed, feel free to share your question via the Q&A function, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And don't forget, your answer may lie in the white paper that we're releasing today. And for those of you with follow-up questions, our panelists have very generously offered to answer those offline. You're invited to reach out to them through their preferred communication methods, which we'll drop into the chat now. So here we are. Let's start the conversation. Gary, I'm going to direct my very first hard-hitting question to you. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your role and sharing with us the type of employee roles and work settings that might be considered difficult to engage at Berkshire Bank.
Okay, really appreciate sending the first question my way, and it's great to be here with everyone, everyone today. And in my capacity at Berkshire Bank, I have the privilege of leading all of our purpose-driven activities here at the business, which encompasses everything from our corporate responsibility and sustainability work to our communications division and corporate affairs. Ultimately, we're working towards building that vision to be a high-performing, leading, socially responsible community bank. And being a community bank that operates in New England and New York State, we have employees on the front lines in our financial centers that are helping to provide service to our customers. We have maintenance workers in our facilities helping to keep our buildings running. We have couriers to helping deliver mail and deliver important items between our offices. So if you can think of a role, and you may not even think about that role as being part of a bank, it exists at a bank, whether we're talking operations or customer-facing staff. So we've been on this journey for a number of years, making sure that we're meeting employees where they are and ultimately providing a menu of opportunities that not only engage their interests, but engage and balance their availability and professional schedules.
Wonderful, Gary. We're so happy to have you. Thank you. Sylvia, will you tell us a little bit about your role and the type of employee roles and work settings that might be considered challenging to engage at Liberty Mutual? Oh, let's take you off mute, Sylvia.
Okay, sorry about that.
Perfect.
I was just saying, thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be in this panel with Gary and with Megan to really talk about this. And like Gary, Liberty Mutual has a very, very varied workforce, from customer facing in our call centers, as well as operations. And we are in 3 headquarter locations around the country. We have about 36,000 employees around the globe. So therefore, communicating with them is a major issue for us. I sit in the community investments team here at Liberty, and that's primarily centered at the Liberty Mutual Foundation. And my role is actually working with the employee volunteering and giving programs. And we're called, I'm dressed in my uniform. I hope you see it as Liberty Torchbearers. Actually, we had a meeting today with a all hands meeting for one of our teams. And this is one of the ways that we're trying to get the message out, really working within the guts of the company is what I would call it, in middle management, because that's really where there is that kind of gap. We're blessed to have an amazing support from our senior management, from the CEO on down, but getting into the space where workers are actually working and doing the work is a real issue for us. And with COVID coming in, we've gone to that hybrid workforce, which means that we have to meet employees where they are, whether they're in the office or whether they're at home working, whether they're out doing claims and looking at what is out there in the community. That's what our goal is, to find a way to reach them. And through our Torchbearers program, which is our all kind of encompassing program, we offer both hybrid, virtual, in-house, the gamut of how you can be engaged. But we're really focused now on really dealing with the fact that many employees are not in an office, and how do we reach them? And that's why we have the kinds of programs that we have. One is Volunteer with Liberty, that allows employees to actually track their personal time when they're volunteering, and they're rewarded as a part of the Torchbearer program, as well as team building opportunities that managers can use to really get employees engaged and talking to each other and engaging with each other in a way that is not all business centric and goes back to, as Gary said, the purpose, really understanding that we are a generous, giving, caring company, and that's what our employees do. So sharing that information is really important.
That's awesome, Sylvia. Thank you. And Megan, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about your role and those sort of harder to reach diverse roles and work settings that exist at Starbucks.
Absolutely. And thank you for including me on such an important topic. This is something that we all get to think about every day. I lead employee engagement at Starbucks. So my job is similar to my peers here, to get all Starbucks employees engaged and doing good across the many different social impact and sustainability opportunities at Starbucks. Like others, we have a big menu of those different opportunities to try to meet folks where they are. At Starbucks, we call our employees partners, and we talk about partners who engage in our social impact and sustainability programs as community champions. So I want to call out that I'll be using that language today. I know it's a little bit unique talking about your employees as partners. Starbucks is part of so many communities around the US and around the world. I hope many of you have been to some of those Starbucks, and I'm focused on reaching over 250,000 partners. So that is everyone from the barista that maybe served you your local cup of coffee last time you visited a Starbucks store, to those retail leaders that oversee our Starbucks stores, to the partners in our roasting plants and distribution centers that are roasting and packing millions of pounds of coffee every day, coffee, tea, cocoa, and more. So there's a huge variety of partners, and the vast majority are not in an office setting, or in like the corporate, what we call support roles. So that is a little bit about the Starbucks partners. And again, my vision is to empower every single Starbucks partner to take action as a community champion.
Amazing. So we've picked the three, I think, perfect examples of diverse roles and work settings, right? They're varied across industry, but still exists that there are employees that aren't sitting in front of their computer like we are today, who might feel are a little easier to share information with or to get them out of their seats and into the community. But like I said, there are challenges, and we just heard from attendees through the responses to that second poll question, some of their major pain points related to engaging all of the employees that make up their employer's workforce. Just out of curiosity, love to see hopefully some nods of heads here that those challenges, those pain points resonate with each of you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wholeheartedly. That communication barrier, the senior leadership support, the challenge in scheduling when these opportunities can take place. All of this really does make your job as corporate citizenship leaders a little more difficult. And we can look at it from the flip side, that there is a little bit more creativity, a little bit more intentionality that comes with making sure we're empowering all of those employees and enabling them to participate. So let's get into why attendees have joined us today. What's been working to overcome some of these challenges? And I'll start with sort of the top here, gaining senior leader support and buy-in, which we know cascades down to middle management support and buy-in. We know that supervisor support, someone's direct manager, can either make or break efforts to get everyone engaged, right? They really do control a schedule for that employee that we're trying to engage in social impact work. Sylvia, would love to hear a little bit more about how you think about getting senior leader and middle management support at Liberty Mutual.
Well, as I said earlier, I've been blessed that our senior leaders from day one have been really very much engaged in making sure that employees have an opportunity to participate in volunteering and giving programs across the globe. It's been one of our goals to make sure that it is inclusive, such that there's a way that someone can find an opportunity that they can work with. We have our CEO gives a message. We have a big kickoff for our corporate service days. We are included in our ELM meetings, which are the top meetings of all the senior people at Liberty on an annual basis. And they get a chance also to participate in our programming and support it from that manner. They also serve as role models, talking about and really sharing their experiences and the value that they get from being volunteering and giving back to the community. So it's really important to get that kind of top leadership support, because it does trickle down. It does make it easier to call and have a meeting and say, I'd like to talk to you because Tim said I should give you a call or whatever. So it really does make a really big difference. And then as it trickles down, the desire to be able to allow employees to get out. One of the things that happened this year for us that was really significant, our corporate service days were limited to 2 weeks. Now we went to 3 weeks, recognizing the sort of difficulty in terms of scheduling. And so if we spread it out a little bit further, more employees will have the opportunity to participate, and it lessens the pressure that's happening in terms of with the manager who's trying to make sure that our customers are being serviced at the same time that we want to give back to the community. So when you look at how your programs can be changed to meet those kinds of needs, when you have senior leadership behind you to support you in making those kinds of changes in your programming, making sure that those that information is put out such that it's clear that this is part of Liberty's culture, giving back. And as a torchbearer, we say there's a torchbearer in all of us. We are a community of caring. It really does it does permeate throughout the entire company.
I love it. It starts from the top, really,
It starts from the top.
which is great to hear. Megan, how about you at Starbucks? How does senior leadership or middle management support look for you?
Yeah, and I love that point about role modeling. We've definitely seen at Starbucks then when leaders, both at the executive level, but also at the management level, are engaging in social impact programs, it really sets that model and that expectation for all employees to get engaged. I'm also very fortunate that buy-in for doing good is really strong at Starbucks at the senior leadership level. It's really rooted in our mission and values. And even underpinning Starbucks' mission is a set of 6 promises. And our promises include both a community promise and an environmental promise. So like really embedding that into our business and operations and things that we talk about with all stakeholders really has helped enable and set that platform for us to have that buy-in at all levels. And then really embedding that, taking that, threading that, and embedding that through our business has been really helpful for us. So one example of something that we do is the very first meeting for every single partner between the manager and the new hire partner. We actually start to talk about social impact in our Community Champions program. At Starbucks, we call this meeting the first sip. Of course, it has to do with coffee, but community is embedded. So in that first sip, that first orientation meeting, there's a coffee tasting at the start, but the final closing segment is a short conversation that the store manager has about how that store is engaged in the community, what nonprofits they like to work with, and how the new employee can get engaged. So that very first conversation really sets the groundwork and begins to build awareness for how every single partner can engage as a community champion from day one. And we continue to build on that and embed that throughout business operations wherever we can to really emphasize how critical it is that we are all engaged in doing good.
I love it. So it's not just top down, but it's also codified in a lot of your operational practices so that it is true that they're hearing about it from the first sip.
Absolutely.
Gary, you're doing something really unique at Berkshire Bank, which I think is an example of getting senior leaders on board to do something that I bet our attendees in the audience would find just about impossible. You actually shut down your financial centers one afternoon a year for your annual day of volunteering, Extraordinary Day, which I believe you've just come from maybe a few weeks ago. Tell us how in the world you got their buy-in to shut down those financial centers one afternoon.
Yeah, Kay, it's a great question. And part of it gets back to comments that Sylvia and Megan both shared. You know, as a 177-year-old community bank that was created to bank factory workers working in Western Massachusetts, it's really inherent and part of our DNA to make sure that we're lifting up the communities in which we operate. And we've had a high-performing volunteer program, employee volunteer program for a number of years. And we had what, many would look at as really high participation rates, 60, 70%, even before we launched our Extraordinary Day. But we kept hearing from our workforce, particularly those frontline workers, that, hey, I would love to get out and volunteer as a team, my whole financial center. I want to get out and meet folks, but yeah, you have a company-wide volunteer day, but we can't get out. We're still open. We still have to service, customers. So we took that back as a management group, and at the time, I wasn't part of that management group, and said, how do we solve for this? We're a purpose-driven institution. We're values-guided. We're community-driven. How can we be better? And that's when we came up with this idea of, what if we shut down the company for a half day? What better way to truly lead with your values than to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, which is particularly ironic given that we're a bank. But I remember sitting down and, with our CEO at the time and with number of other senior leaders and really laid out the business case for why we would shut down. And part of that business case was built on the brand and marketing benefits that we expected to achieve. Part of that business case was built on how we mitigated potential customer disruptions, as part of that, and then how did we create that business case where, this event is driving a mutually beneficial impact for our communities. So ultimately, I did enough convincing and made a solid enough business case backed with data and backed with numbers, where our management team at the time said yes. So we hosted actually our first extraordinary day back in 2016. And we just hosted our 7th and most recent one, had a little pause during the pandemic, but actually just hosted our 7th one just last week. So annually on that day, we see anywhere between 75 to 80, 90% of all of our workforce out volunteering, in the community. We also have and still have to provide, we're a large company, and we still have to provide support in our call centers, for customers who, may have business that needs to get done. So we also provide on-ramps for those employees to engage in the day virtually. So thanks to all of that, we did, I think, 47 different projects last week. Well over 1,000 of our employees participated in that day. And what I think I'm always most proud of every single year, and when I think back to that original business case, is we generated a heck of a lot of positive media coverage and public relations attention. But most importantly, in that first year, we didn't have one customer complain that we closed early to get back and give out in the community. And even just this past year, we did not have one customer complain or submit a complaint that we were closed. And I think that really gets to the heart of, what we're talking about today is sometimes these challenges that can seem so complex, sometimes don't have that complex of solutions. If you can get the data, create a compelling story, and create a compelling case, I actually think you can do some big and bold things with your business.
Amazing. I'm blown away, honestly, by that, Gary, just from my own past life and knowing the data you would have to provide to actually, allow senior leaders to say, let's try this. I'm not scared. Let's try this. So it's such a great example of living your corporate values out loud. And we do know, though, that Extraordinary Day just happens once a year, and you do look well rested, I will say, after just completing your 7th last week. Tell us about how you involve all of the employees that you mentioned that serve in diverse roles year round, including those who might be remote. What are you testing? What's been working for you, Gary?
Yeah, another great question. And, we're really fortunate here at Berkshire. We have an amazing team, both dedicated team that helps manage our community engagement, activities. But we also have a team even beyond that. We have kind of community impact councils in every one of our markets that helps us identify, plan, and select projects. I'm sure many of the attendees here and even some of my fellow panelists have similar approaches so that our employee volunteer efforts are strategic for our business and our own, ESG goals, but also responsive to local needs and the needs of our communities. So we offer a menu of projects year round that are identified, planned, selected, executed by local employees in their regional markets. And what we found is, for employees at different career stages, from different communities, they have very different reasons why they're volunteering. So an entry-level employee may be going out to volunteer because they want to have exposure to senior leaders, because they want to join the company, they want to grow. So those types of employees are more drawn to certain in-person kind of team building style projects, while some of our more senior leaders may be driven to participate in more skills-based engagement, where I can leverage my expertise to get out and volunteer and to create an impact or to leave a legacy. And really folks everywhere in between. So having an understanding of what motivates our employees is really crucial to the success and driving the engagement that we see. And that's even more important for those hard to reach or those remote workers. So although we're a regional community bank, we actually have staff, all across the US. We have some hybrid roles and some roles that are predominantly remote for specialized. And we have a national lending subsidiary of 44 Business Capital. So we had volunteer events on Extraordinary Day in Denver, Colorado, and we had events in Florida as well. But reaching those employees, there are basic, skills and programs that that we run. So we do a lot of virtual events as kind of part of that menu, a lot of in-person, a lot of team building, and that variety based on local interest, local feedback is what drives the most engagement. Of course, being although communications isn't I would say my area of expertise, I do oversee our communications group here at Berkshire. And that's another really important lever in understanding, not just making sure you have the right projects or menus of options, but you're communicating in the right way and pulling those right levers to reach your target audience, whether that be your maintenance workers or your baristas at Starbucks.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Gary. I love variety is the spice of life, right? I love to say that. One last question for you from the audience before we move on from Extraordinary Day. Is it optional? And do you offer paid time off to participate?
Yeah, so we do offer paid time off. So we offer 16 hours of paid time off for employees to volunteer at any projects throughout the year. And we know many of our employees actually volunteer quite a bit more of that. We leave some flexibility in our volunteer time off policy for management discretion. So we think of the 16 hours more as a minimum versus a maximum, if that makes sense. For Extraordinary Day in particular, we do, if you are an employee in a financial center, I hate to use the term required because I don't think we've ever used the term required, but it is very highly encouraged that folks get out and volunteer. This year, I think we had a little over 75% of our workforce. We do have some staff that had to, have to stay back to run certain operations. We actually just launched a new mobile experience yesterday for our customers. So not only did we have our big volunteer day, we launched a new platform to deliver a better experience for our customers. So we had a little bit lower number on Extraordinary Day than we typically would because of that massive systems conversion. But it's a great question.
Good luck to you with the mobile experience, Gary.
Thank you.
Awesome. Sylvia, would love to hear a little bit about year-round engagement from Liberty Mutual employees. And specifically, I know you're doing something unique for your remote or your hybrid workers. Will you tell us a little bit?
Well, like Gary, the year-round is really important. It provides employees to find the things that they want to do, but we really look at what an employee does on their personal time. They can track their time in our Volunteer with Liberty program, and with that comes, we have a kind of a hybrid, I guess you call it a hybrid dollars for doers, but if employees volunteer on their personal time and track it for 50 hours, they actually earn another day off in the upcoming year annually to be able to go out and volunteer. Additionally, if they track 100 hours or more, we pattern this after the Points of Light PVSA Presidential Volunteer Awards. But if they volunteer for 100 hours, they earn $2,500 to direct toward a nonprofit of their choice. If they do 250 hours over the course of the year, they earn $3,750 to give to a nonprofit, or they can choose multiples. And then if you do 500 hours or more, which is really like having another full-time job, they get $5,000 to direct toward a charity of their choice. It really is an incentive for them. We have, over the course of the time that we've been offering it, over 100 people per year pretty much participate in it. The majority get the what we call the bronze medal, and very few people get the top 500. It's around 10 people per year that really do that, but the vast majority are between the gold and the bronze and the silver, which it makes a really big difference because you can tell that people really care about what they're doing, and it's a way that we show that we empower them and support them in being outstanding givers back into their community. On a more local level, in terms of if you just track an hour a quarter, you go into a quarterly drawing, and it's a possibility that you could get win $500 to donate toward an organization of your choice. Then we do that in the sense of it's every quarter this happens, and we break up the population, the head count, in smaller geographic areas so that we can make sure that everybody is not pooled in Boston or pooled in Texas. And so that way, all across the company in various departments, and I've never gone to any department where someone had not won the quarterly drawing, because that then makes it palatable and makes it easy for people to see I can be engaged. They see their peer doing it, and it really does make a huge difference. And also in our volunteer program, the earning part of it, to being able to get Liberty Mutual Foundation money to give back to nonprofits that they care about. It means that throughout all 50 states and even our international partners, they're able to give to their company, to their local area. So we end up being able to say that in all 50 states, believe it or not, when there even some states where there are only like 3 or 4 employees, they get a chance to be able to give back on Liberty's behalf to their community. And that bond between the work that you do earns you the opportunity to direct Liberty's foundation money is really important for employees, because they feel that they have control over it. They don't have to do what the company wants to focus on. They have to do what they are passionate about. And that passion is huge in terms of getting others to see them as role models as well. We also have something we call our Torchbearer Champions, and they serve as our local ambassadors to be able to tell people about what Torchbearers is, because it has so many different ways you can do it, to make sure that people understand that how they can engage. That's really important. We have about 350 across the country, and we anticipate growing that number of champions as we go forward. The other thing that we're working on and looking at piloting is really looking at the head count, not about where your quote office is, but where you live, because that's really what we want people to feel, that there is a connection to their local community. So we're looking at zip codes and where we should be, and how many places we should, how many opportunities should be around the country, and introducing some of our employees about what's being done. I was just down in Florida, and as a result of that conversation, someone found out that their colleague was doing a project, and now the whole team does that project. So this is the kind of cross-pollination that we're looking for on a year-round basis for volunteering. And virtual is one of the things that, looking for that hard-to-reach employee, looking at how we use virtual and support that is a really important part of any project when you're thinking about reaching. And that's what, COVID had some good things, and that's one of the things it's done, is it expanded our thought processes around how to use virtual projects to be able to provide that information to our employees to figure out how to do that.
Love it. You really are, again, exemplifying meeting employees where they are. And I also love the idea for Liberty Mutual is an employee, regardless of role, can earn paid time off to volunteer, as long as they're showcasing that they're putting some skin in the game, that this is important to them, that they are reflecting the values of the company. So kudos to you, Sylvia, and for all that you do for Torchbearers.
I just want to say, and we sit in the company's values of making things better and putting people first. And so
Yeah.
that's where all of our programs sit in our overall corporate values and as a part of our purpose for the company.
I love it. I love it. Megan, would love for you to share how year-round social impact engagement works at Starbucks, again, regardless of what that employee or partner actually does for the company.
Absolutely. And I'll continue building on some common themes around empowering employees to engage locally in the ways that resonate with them, or they're passionate about, let them leverage their skills, and also recognizing employees for that impact that they're making. We really believe that every action to do good matters, and to make engagement most accessible. Like everyone else, we really have to meet employees where they are. So for those reasons, we really broaden our focus beyond community service. Our Starbucks Community Champion Framework highlights many different ways that Starbucks partners can make a positive impact in the community, both outside of stores and also just by doing their jobs. So I'll touch on the environmental component we've woven in that someone asked a question about in the chat. We focus on 6 components of doing good that are relevant to Starbucks business and reflect the activities that our partners are already engaging in. And we consistently heard come through in listening sessions. As we evolved this program, we really did a lot of listening to ask our partners, what are they already doing? What do they care about? What resonates with them in terms of community engagement? So very briefly, those pillars are first, we continue to prioritize what we call serve, which largely speaks to volunteerism, both with a team or, as Sylvia talked about, as an individual. We also highlight our second pillar is give. So ways that our partners can donate funds personally, can host donation drives in their stores, can donate product. Third, we emphasize taking time to learn about social issues. So learn is our third pillar. Really prioritizing that understanding and learning about what communities need is a critical way we can all show up positively in our communities. And to support that, we actually have built and are continuing to build out an open source community and sustainability curriculum that's available on Starbucks Global Academy and allows partners to be supported in that learning journey around learning about community and sustainability. Fourth, we support partners in using their voice and their vote to advocate for change. So we call our fourth pillar advocate, and we actually have a civic engagement platform and encourage partner community engagement through our 13 different employee resource groups in the US as another way of advocating with folks who share similar passions, experiences. Fifth, we think about recognition and storytelling as critically important. So our fifth pillar we call celebrate. And it's really about how do we take the time to celebrate and share impact stories about the nonprofits that we're working with, around the community impact that we're doing, around the environmental impact that we might have, because we know that taking the time to celebrate those stories and share those stories creates this virtuous cycle and really starts to inspire more impact. So just by celebrating, we are actually fostering that impact and potentially bringing others along who might not have been engaged before. Finally, we highlight how our partners can do good just by doing their jobs. And we call our final pillar uplift. That could come to life in so many different ways. It could be offering coffee grounds to customers to use in their gardens, which we do in many stores across the country. It could be inviting our customers to use for hereware if we notice that they're going to be sitting in the cafe to limit those single-use cups. It could be every day partners in our stores participate in our food share food donation program where they collect that unsold food and donate it to local food banks. So those are a lot of those. We really woven a lot of those sustainability and environmental practices into our framework and called it out that we've heard from our partners, it's really empowering to be told, you're already a community champion. You're already engaged in doing good. And we know that kind of calling that out, how you can do good just by doing your job, gets folks to say, okay, what more can I do? How can I continue to get engaged? So that's how we've evolved our framework, really, again, supporting partners and taking action in a huge menu of ways, and in one or many. We really try to also celebrate small acts matter just as much as big acts. You don't have to do all of the things. What is that thing where you can engage in a way that makes sense for you? And while we do have also a few moments throughout the year where we really shine a spotlight on specific actions, overall, we're trying to empower our partners to take the actions that resonate with them when they have that interest and capability of getting engaged. And finally, I will say we have a giving match policy, which we've also worked to evolve over the years to make more accessible and more inclusive, to reward and incentivize this behavior of engaging in a lot of different ways. So just a couple things we've done there to really ground this in is eliminating minimum hours required to earn the volunteer time match, really reducing down to just $5, the personal financial donation match, as well as we do match time to align with that commitment around learning. If you're having a lunch and learn with a nonprofit organization and the nonprofit's teaching you about that issue, that is eligible for our volunteer time match. So we count that learning as part of something that we want to reward through that giving match program.
Lowering the thresholds is really important too, to make sure everyone feels like they have an opportunity to participate. Thank you, Megan. And I personally love the community champions model, since it's so close to Points of Light civic circle framework. But Uplift to me is just a unique demonstration of equity and accessibility, a way to integrate impact into your daily tasks for just about any role. Love it. And I know you've been really successful at that. So thank you for sharing with our attendees a little bit more about community champions and how you think about actions, big and small, and how you support partners in their social impact. Now, I know we could talk about this for days, probably all four of us here and our attendees who are actively listening here, but I know we're going to run out of time. So we have talked about several different successful practices that your companies are testing or have implemented. And I'd love for each of you in the few minutes we have left to give one parting piece of wisdom for those of our attendees who we saw are actively working on a plan to being more intentional about including all employees in their social impact strategy. So give us one piece of advice, one parting wisdom, so that folks can get back, when they get back to their desk, they can start implementing that into their strategy. And Sylvia, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you.
Well, I think the most important thing is understand, especially if you're starting out, is have a goal or know where you want to, the point that you want to get to. But understand, if you're starting out, take it small, take it step by step, year by year. Don't try to do everything in 1 year. And I would suggest that the most important thing you can do in year one is get buy-in from your senior management, such that you can then evolve the program in the myriad of ways to meet your employee base. Really get that senior buy-in first, then build it out, have them understand that you know the data, you know the numbers, and you have a way of explaining it in a business person's language, such that they can, again, go along and support you with a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, something that gives you some flexibility of responding to what's happening with your employee base.
Love it. So 2 great pieces of advice. Start at the top, but also don't try to do everything all at once in that first few months or year of your strategic plan. Brilliant. Gary, how about you, sir? What would be your parting piece of wisdom for our attendees?
Just one parting piece of
Just one, if you can. Or 2.
Yeah, I'm going to build a little bit off, what Sylvia said too, to kind of connect this together. Is you have to have the goal. You have to know where you're going. You also have to have a really sound understanding of what motivates your workforce, and have a really sound understanding of what is your workforce, who are going to be those hard to reach folks. What is it that they like to engage with? How do they like engage? And understanding those motivations will only help when you're ultimately designing programs and projects. I think the third and my final piece, because I just see it as such a big part of our success at Berkshire and how we've grown our program over the year, is, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. you have to build the business case. And I think where I've found us getting the most traction is when we're leading with the business case first and foremost, and really having a good understanding of the numbers, the business side, the impact side. That's really helped us get to yes with management, get to yes with, our board. We're a publicly traded company like Starbucks and others. So we have a lot of stakeholders that we're responsive to. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Love it. All right. So build the business case, but also understand your employees' motivations and their unique circumstances. Understand what their job really entails so that you can design programs that help them feel included and enable their participation. Okay, Megan, take us home with your piece of advice.
I will sneak in my double advice with advice and challenge. I'll build on what Gary shared. I feel incredibly strongly that if you want to create equity and access, you have to start with listening to employees. Ask your employees what they want. Ask what's getting in the way of them taking action to do good, and then show them that they matter by relentlessly going after removing or mitigating those barriers. I believe that that's been our approach at Starbucks, and grounding our work in deep and ongoing partner and community listening has been the key to really driving that engagement for partners from across the country, around the world, and giving our partners what they want and acknowledging that it came and it's inspired by them also makes them feel heard and really excited to be a part of the process and share more. And then I'll close out with a challenge. If you take my advice, Gary's advice as well, and you go out and you do employee listening, after you listen, take a moment to reflect on what you heard. And I challenge you to broaden your perspective and think about how can your employees do good beyond volunteerism and giving, and what are all the ways that you want to include in your goodness and employee engagement approach. And I am happy to be a resource and share if it's helpful to anyone who's also looking to evolve their framework.
I love it. Thank you, Megan. All right. So listening, also important, and getting out of their way, understanding what gets in their way. But I love the challenge to our attendees to really think bigger, maybe, about the actions that are part of their social impact strategy. Maybe even how do you embed it into their daily tasks. So friends, that concludes today's webinar. I'd like to thank our panelists for being with us today. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Megan. We so appreciate learning from each of you and understanding how to be more intentional when it comes to designing strategy, our programs, our communications, and the policies that support employees. I'd also like to thank attendees for joining us, taking time from your day to be here. You will be receiving an email with a recording of our webinar, along with a few key takeaways, as well as a short survey. And I'll actually ask my teammates to drop the survey link in case anyone wants to jump in and take that now. That survey feedback will help shape future Points of Light webinars. And we couldn't have provided such an excellent learning opportunity with the help of so many of my Points of Light colleagues. So I would like to extend a thank you to each of them who helped bring this conversation to life. We hope you'll join us for more upcoming webinars from Points of Light. But until then, stay healthy, everyone, and absolutely enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all so very much.